You're watching Global Lens. 241 people have been confirmed dead after Air India's Boeing 787 Dreamliner plane crashed near Ahmedabad in India on the 12th of June. Only one person survived the crash and is receiving treatment. Grieving families await answers as investigators comb through the wreckage of the plane. The Aviation Ministry has confirmed that one black box with flight data and cockpit voice recorder has been recovered. CCTV footage revealed that the flight crashed 59 seconds after taking off with its landing gear still deployed. US authorities have said that 787 fleet will not be grounded as of now and say the investigation is at a preliminary stage. It is too early to say what may have caused the crash. The US is sending a joint team that includes members from the Federal Aviation Administration, Boeing and GE to India to join the probe. UK is also sending a team of experts to assist the probe into the crash which killed 52 British nationals. This week's crash is the first fatal accident involving a Dreamliner. In 2013, two Boeing 787s suffered lithium-ion battery fires, one in the air, another on the ground. That prompted the FAA to ground every 787 for a few months. By April 2013, Boeing redesigned the battery system and the FAA approved its return to service. What could be the probable causes of the crash and what does it mean for Boeing's reputation? Joining us right now to discuss this is aeronautical engineer and test pilot Dr. Gratton. He's also Associate Professor of Aviation and Environment at Cranfield University. Thank you for being with us, Professor Gratton. Let me start by asking you about the possible reason why this crash could have occurred. Some experts have said that it lost lift and the flap settings were wrongly set. Would you say that this may have actually caused the crash?
I would say that we just don't know yet. It's probably not lift the aircraft lost, but thrust. The evidence suggests that the engines were winding back and not providing the amount of thrust. That requires the pilot, while they try to resolve the thrust problem, to slow the aircraft down. And it does look like that was happening. But the videos we've got, they're inconclusive. I'm very reluctant to conclude that we know anything specifically about the flaps, but we do know that they did not raise the undercarriage when we'd have expected them to. We do know clearly that the aeroplane started to descend. And we do know that the pilot made a mayday call that indicated he believed to be losing thrust. So all of that, I think, is consistent with the engines failing to provide power in some way. What reason for that, we just don't know.
Some experts have said, Professor Gratton, that there may have been fuel contamination. But do you think that's something extremely rare?
Fuel contamination occurs. It shouldn't, because there are stringent tests at the airports to check the quality of the fuel. However, I think that is pure conjecture. And also, for a sudden loss of power on both engines from contamination, sounds to me quite unlikely.
What, according to you, from whatever information we have available right now, is the most probable cause of crash?
It is far too early to talk about most probable cause. The investigators, the Indians have professional investigators, and clearly they're going to be supported by the British and Americans. They will need to take their time to look at the wreckage, to go through the two recorders, to interview eyewitnesses, and start to pull together a picture from which they can determine cause. And far more importantly, they can determine the recommendations they can make as to how to prevent any similar accident happening in the future. And for the rest of us to conject about cause, quite honestly, it's irresponsible. Firstly, we don't have enough evidence to do it. And secondly, there are hundreds of bereaved families who are deeply distressed right now. Unsurprisingly, they're going to be online. They're going to be watching your program and looking at my website, looking for answers. And I think we have to be very careful about offering them if we're really not sure about that.
We know that Boeing as well as the engine maker GE will be assisting in the probe. What are some of the factors they will be looking at, and what are the questions that would be posed to them?
Well, clearly, this is very concerning for both Boeing and the engine manufacturer because something went wrong, and it's very important to them that whatever happened never happens again. So they need to look very hard into this. I suspect one of the first areas of great interest is going to be what they can get from the cockpit voice recorder, because by hearing what the captain and his first officer were saying to each other, they will get a very good idea of what in the cockpit was believed to be going wrong and the descriptions as they went through it of what actions those two pilots took to try and resolve the situation. And I think that's probably one of the first things everybody is going to be interested in. Further from that, of course, the flight data recorder will have in the order of 1,000 parameters of information about how everything significant on the aeroplane was functioning. And they will start to be able to see from that what was the cause of the undercarriage not going up, what was the cause of the engines apparently losing power. And from this, they can start to piece together a picture of the events that led to this awful tragedy.
And India will be heading the probe, but investigators from the US and UK will also be assisting the Indian team. What kind of role will these investigators play, and how long will it take for them to give a preliminary analysis?
So, yes, so the Indian authorities are investigating. They will be clearly in the lead on this. NTSB is supporting, as are the British Air Accident Investigation Branch, who have announced they're sending a multidisciplinary team to support in India. The Americans and British, of course, have got access to a lot of technology. The Americans have got access to Boeing. So that will help a lot in supporting the Indian team in understanding what was going on within the aeroplane. In terms of timescales, yes, for a full report to take 2 years or even more is not that unusual, simply because there is so much evidence, there is so much to learn, and there may well be what appear to be tangential recommendations to be made, for example, about crash survivability. Was nothing to do with the cause of the accident, but is important, and that can take time. However, what I would expect is, because this is so serious and so visible, I think we are likely to get interim announcements, perhaps in 30 days, maybe even faster than that, of what is initially being found in the lead up to the eventual full report. And I think certainly from your viewpoint as a journalist, I would be probably asking the Indian authorities when that is going to be, because that's going to be very important.
And what are some of the questions does this kind of an incident pose for an airline?
I would tend not to worry about the fact that they've been taken over by Tata, because the aviation regulator will regulate Air India in exactly the same way, whoever owns it. And that is necessarily of an extremely high standard, and Air India's safety reputation actually is very good. The initial actions by the Air India board are entirely appropriate, but right now they don't know, none of us know what's happened here. So I think in the longer term, what is important to monitor is Air India's response to any recommendations that are made, the causes as we believe they come out for the aircraft, and whether they and their parent company are adequately resourcing them. Most importantly of all, rolling out any safety recommendations to make quite sure that a tragedy like this never happens again, because otherwise it becomes even worse than it is now.
And what does this mean for Boeing and its reputation going ahead?
Well, Boeing has been a troubled company for some years. The 737-8 MAX accidents, of course, are very public, and there's a lot been said about Boeing's corporate culture and how it contributed to that. Now, we hope that Boeing have been putting right what has gone wrong in the past. And certainly the Boeing 787 has been relatively a very trouble-free aeroplane. This is, in 14 years service, the first major accident of a 787. So without doubt, this is going to be putting pressure onto Boeing. It is, of course, totally unsurprising that their share price would drop after an accident like this. But I think that if we see Boeing continue to support the investigation, themselves implementing any safety recommendations, then and continuing to progress and learn the lessons that they were learned from the 737-8 MAX disasters, then you would hope that Boeing will continue to be heading in the direction of returning to be the manufacturer of amazing engineering products that certainly was their historical position.
All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Lens right here on CNBC TV 18 Prime. We will be back same place, same time tomorrow. Stay tuned.